50. It's a conversation that comes up a lot for people who are divorced
Mm.
and some people who've never been married, but it also is a conversation that comes up a lot in the church world. And I think that there are a lot of reasons in the church world that we don't talk about a lot of things. And I think that's another show in its entirety and one I fully intend to host. But we don't talk a lot about dating. It's not a conversation that we have a lot. And so I wanted to be the one to have that conversation and to have it this way. So we're going to do this conversation, we hope, at least in two parts. It may end up being more than that, depending on how far we get with it. But the first part is today. Next week, we're going to come together with a slightly larger group and continue the conversation. But today we're starting with this group of people talking about dating over 50 years old. And so I just want to open the floor to anyone to say, when you think of dating over 50, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, firstly, I would say as a Christian dating, what does that look like? Because if I were to go back on rely on the Bible, which I do now, I would say that you have to find someone that, as the Bible says, it says, do not believe every spirit, but test every spirit. So you got to test the spirit, and you might not believe it, but you got to test the spirit of your significant other if you're dating, because as a Christian, you want to know that they're in the spirit, or or you can lead them to it. They're able to be led to the spirit before you even start the date. I think that would be a challenge. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I would think, as a Christian, if you're out dating, that would be a concern.
Absolutely. But for me, the first thing that came to mind is dating over 50 for me has been exhausting. I'll tell you why.
Okay. All right. Do tell.
It's because I was out of the dating game for a while, and dating has changed. It looks different from when I was back in my 20s and 30s. And so it's been a challenge for me, because not being in the dating game for a while and being single and then now going to that, you're used to being by yourself. You're used to sort of like doing things on your own. And now you're adding this other person.
You got to make space for someone else.
Yeah, you have to be, you have to pay attention to that person's feelings. You have to be emotionally intelligent about your partner. And it's just been a challenge for me, because I'm just so used to just like, I'm going to go here. I don't have to, tell somebody where I'm going, or I don't have to be, back at a certain time. I can do what I want, and now it's like a little bit, it's a lot different. So
consideration.
It's been a challenge for me.
Okay, so we have considerations you have to make.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I think, oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Okay. I think for me, dating in my 50s was amazing. And I have to say that because I was dating Fred, my husband. But when I first started dating him, I was in my 40s, mid 40s. So that gave us quite some time to get to know each other. So that's why, but we were still dating. So in my 50s, it was fabulous because we've already worked out most of our kinks, most of our, getting to know each other. And we got married when I was still in my 50s, like 57, right?
Yeah. 57.
And now I'm 60, so I'm not in my 50s anymore. But I just lost my train of thought. But I think that dating in my 50s, I feel much more secure, more grown up, more focused. I know exactly what I want, where I want to go, and what I want to do. So for me, it's like I'm settling into it, like I'm nestling into it. So starting this journey in my 60s and Fred's just 50, I think it's going to be smooth sailing. I mean, we have our, you know, we just had a fight this weekend, but we weren't really talking, but yeah, I think it's been really nice for me, refreshing.
Yeah. And as a man's point of view, you know, just you know, being newly 50, it just seems that, you know, when you're 30s and your 40s, you know, you're trying to figure it out. And as being 50, I realized that, you know, okay, so I'm more wiser, more stronger, and most importantly, having God in our lives, you know, just being, you know, the first, you know, just the guidance and just having that guidance by God. And it's just a great feeling. And, you know, like for example, even if we get into an argument, we're able to work things out in a great manner. You know, we respect each other, you know, hear each other out, and we're able to work it out. Whereas in my 30s and 40s, you know, it was more erratic and like no guidance. And so just being older in the 50s, I feel it's an advantage, a great advantage.
Yeah. Can I add something else?
Please.
Yeah. So, I really didn't have any time in between. I was married before Fred and I getting married. I was married for 20 years and very, very different. I have to say, like age, it says it all. My previous husband, is 20 years older than me. And when I first met him, I was a teenager, like a very young teenager. And I worked for him. I worked part-time, you know, after high school for him. And I was so young, just learning. And so going through my 20s when I started my family, I didn't really even know what I wanted. I did not know. I just know that I had a house, I had children, I had the white picket fence, everything was nice, but it really wasn't. I mean, great guy and everything, but I was so young. And as I was going through my 20s and my 30s, my facial expression changed. And I'm still not saying it in a bad way, but it's just like when you're in your 20s, there's such an innocence in your eyes. And then when you get into your 30s, there's a different kind of a look in your eyes, like, kind of a sort of a curious look. And when you get in your 40s, your eyebrows are like really raised high. Like, is this right? And so that's when my transition started to happen with my ex-husband, who was wonderful, wonderful provider and wonderful guy, but just so much older than me, so much more experienced than me. And I'm just wanting to experience the world like, I don't mean it like that, but just I really wanted to experience it as a woman. And so I didn't have any time in between to date. I just went right into getting divorced to meeting him like the next couple months. So I never really got to date many different people. And like I said, I was growing in my 20s and my 30s, and I've always known God. But just being secure with myself, and starting to understand like what it really means to be a virtuous woman. I think it was even then, but I feel so much more, you know, fitting into that role now as a virtuous woman with God.
That's beautiful.
So,
Amen.
yeah.
That's so
Amen.
beautiful. That's beautiful.
What Shelley mentioned though kind of brings me to mind when I look back at myself, like now I'm at the point where I know what I want. I have better discernment on men in general. Like when I meet somebody, I have a better discernment and understanding what's important. So when you're in your 20s, you're like, oh, I want the tall, handsome man. He's gonna be 6 whatever. He's gonna have this kind of job. He's gonna drive this kind of car. And as you get older, wiser, you understand that, what, I want a guy that has character, that loves God, that has the character that I know is going to treat me right. I look at how that person may treat their parents, their siblings, and so forth, because that's going to be a reflection on how he will treat me. So those things become more important to me than the flashy things that whatever rust away or what have you.
Yeah, I understand. For me, my father, my uncles, my great uncles, my brothers, they were all like gentlemen, really. So I was always accustomed to like men opening the door, pulling out the chair, you going in first. I mean, just all of that, all of that. But I did wonder whether all men were like that. I said, huh. It wasn't immediately because it was just normal to me. But after a while, you're going to school and blah, 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 you start seeing different things. Now, a lot of people said they believed in God, a lot of people. But how were they actually brought up? What was their actual exposure? When they're saying they believed in God, I watched to see what they were doing that was godly or ungodly and what that was based on. So that had a lot to do with my decision. And yeah, I still wanted the person to be, not good looking to everybody else, just good looking to me. And the way a person was good looking to me is how they actually were inside and how that showed outside. So to a lot of people, well, he's ugly. He says, no, nobody's actually ugly to me. That's the funny thing. Right. No one is ugly to me. And to me, it's how you are on the inside, what your beliefs are and what you do. And that sort of determined, only partly determined who I was dating or whatever. Because I still believe you work hard, you believe in yourself, you're respectful, you respect yourself, you respect your family, but lots of things happen. Lots of things happen that are not so happy or not so good. So all of that has to come into play for your realization of what I wanted anyhow, and what my expectation was, because I know nobody was perfect because I'm not. So I still, funny enough, my husbands, they were good looking to me, but they weren't necessarily good looking to everybody else, right? And I was married twice. I was married very young. I was a teenager when I married the first time. My parents had to sign for me. They did not want to do that. They were totally right all the time. And then I got married. I said, never get married again, because I could not be with someone who was so jealous and so insecure. Although my husband was real good to me. We did all kinds of stuff together. I mean, he was real, but he was so insecure, which ruined it for me. So I didn't get married again until I was like 39. Had a wonderful husband, fabulous. I mean, he did everything. But in the end, he was more jealous of me, not because he thought I was beautiful. Both of them thought that. They would tell me that, all of that stuff. And I always appreciated them, because guess what? Who's beautiful to one person is not good looking at all to somebody else, okay? But the fact they felt that way, I was happy with that, And they treated me respectfully, except for my second husband. He started being more competitive with me, because he was so academically, he had 4 degrees, okay? He had 4 degrees. He traveled here and there. He had lived in different countries, blah, blah, blah. We're the same age. And he was only a few months older than me, but he had done all this stuff. But I had also traveled a lot. I had also done a lot of things. I also have a master's degree. Do you know what I'm saying? And so now I don't have to work anymore at all. Neither the husband did I have to work at all. But I always did things for community, for family, because I believe in that. So that's what I still do. Whatever, I've got to do it, because that's what I believe. That's how I was raised. Well, my second husband was like, well, I got promoted. to be vice president of board of directors for Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. At first, my husband, well, he was so happy because he's the one who campaigned for me, right? And then when I got the promotion, then he was mad because he didn't get promoted on his actual job. I said, but you got a great job. You're making lots of money. But no, I was competitive to him because I was more, I don't know what it was. I accomplished a lot. Do you know what I'm saying? I accomplished a lot, but it's only because I believe in certain things. I believe you need to do whatever you need to do. So brings me to, so how am I thinking about dating now, right? Because both of my husbands passed away, by the way. I know people say, what? Both of your husbands passed away? But no, both my husbands did pass away, unfortunately. And I only had one child, from my first husband. So any case, I'm like, for now, I'm like, I still have the same type of value. I want someone who believes in God. I want someone who just not only believes it, but they're doing things that says it. And I don't mean they have to be holier than holy. I'm saying do things that say it. You're not just doing things for you. You're doing things for you to make sure you can do things for others. Do you know what I mean? Things that are significant enough, whatever that is, for your family, for your friends, for strangers. Do you know what I mean? Do what I like to see that, and you're funny and you're fun and you like to do things and you like to travel, that's sort of what, and that's really the type of person I sort of see.
Yay. Yay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
We're not even getting started
you.
yet, and this is already good. Minister Black.
So I want to begin by saying that so much of what's already been said resonates with me at many, many levels. So I have been divorced. I believe it has been 15 years. And so I was divorced in 2009. And then by 2010, I was purchasing my first home. So I felt like I was really on this trajectory of transition really, really fast. And a few years in, I thought, okay, now I'm ready to date. But to Annette's point, I had this vision in my mind of what that person would look like, but I was basing it on the experience that I had with my ex-husband. So I could understand the competitiveness and perhaps some of the envy and so forth as it relates, to the difference in careers and career success and so forth and so on. And so, I met somebody and it was a very, I think we went out a total of 3 times. And I remember saying to God after I came back from that very last day, okay, God, I get it. This is not for me to figure out. So the next time I go out with somebody, I am going to see them through your eyes and not my own, because maybe I will make a better decision. And so I did, and that didn't work out well. Okay, so on to the next thing. And to date, there hasn't been a next thing. But what I have discovered is that this time has given me opportunity to be introspective and to do a lot of self-reflection, like, who am I as a person? How do I show up when somebody meets me, and it's whether it's husband material or even people that I ultimately become friends with? Okay, how do I show up? Am I emotionally stable? Am I caring? Am I kind? Am I supportive? And so I like to do this checklist. And Pastor Traci's heard me say this all the time. In the world of work, we have one-on-ones with our managers, and they talk to us about what we're doing well and what we need to work on. So that's what I do with God, and sometimes with people that I know. How do I show up as a friend? Am I really supportive? Am I a good listener? According to my children, not all the time, but I'm trying to be better at that. So as I think about what, a future relationship looks like, I have asked God to guard my heart, in that I won't have walls up, but I will listen intentionally. So if you tell me, oh, I'm in a relationship with God because you notice, you hear me say I'm a minister, or you happen to find that out about me. I want to know what your faith and your relationship with God looks like. To your point, Jackie, how does that show up in your everyday life? You know what? Who are you when you are angry? If you've had relationships that didn't work out, it's not going to be enough for you to say, well, it just didn't work out. I really need to understand the whys. I always joke and say that now, if a man is talking to me, I have hearing like a ferret. I am listening very intentionally to what you are saying to me. And then I'll say this lastly, is that I've had to quiet the societal voices that say to me, and I'm speaking of some of my male friends who have said, you are going to be a challenge to date, because for a man who has been conditioned to be the provider, that is, to buy the home and to do the this and the that, you've done that for yourself. I tune that out, because to me, that's extra. That's icing on the cake. That demonstrates that I'm a partner. It doesn't mean I'm a force to be reckoned with. It absolutely does. It absolutely does, because no one will just tell me anything. But lastly, I will say that I think for me, it's important to see people in different seasons so that I can understand who you really are. And then I can see how you're going to show up for me.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that.
I love that. I love that. There's so much to unpack here, and I have
So much
about, everything that all of you have said. So I kind of want to walk through my notes a little bit at a time. It may seem like I'm all over the place, but it's only because I really don't want to leave any stone unturned, because so much of what you said to me is really important parts of the conversation. So I'm going to start sort of with something you said, Minister Collette, and kind of work my way back. You talked about the importance of coming to a relationship and hearing someone talk about their past experience. And I like that. I think that is extremely important. But my question is, how important is it to each of you to hear someone talk about where they failed?
Sorry, I didn't hear that whole question because of some kind of sound.
How important is it to each of you to hear someone talk about where they failed?
For me, it depends. I'm sorry.
No, go on. No.
I was going to say, for me, it depends on how secure and insecure they are when they express whatever it is. For me, if you want to talk about that, good, because you can talk about whatever you filled up and what did you learn from that and what did you do to go forward? What are you using that information for?
Let me be specific, Jackie. I want to say this because I want to be specific, because I'm taking this context of this question from Minister Colette's comments about people saying things like, oftentimes when people talk about past relationships that obviously didn't work, you're here talking to me, right? So, okay, we can surmise it didn't work. And it's easy to talk about what someone else did wrong. Oh, he or she was crazy. They did this, they did that. But what part did you play in it, right? And where did you fail? Because you failed somewhere, you did. Where did you fail? And what did you learn from it? Because if you can't really talk about that, then chances are you didn't learn anything, right? And you're bringing that with you, right? And so that's where I'm going with this question.
I was just having this conversation with Annette today at church. We just had this conversation about, okay, so I failed at this happened, blah, blah, blah. But what was your part in it? What was your part in it? And what did you learn from it? Because if you're telling me all this, I also want to know that, or else you haven't learned anything.
Two sides to every story, I always say, and you got to look at both sides of that coin, then make that determination, make your evaluation. And to go off of working back from what Minister Collette also said, she was basically saying consult with God. Consult with God, and I thought that was very, very important. But I have a question that goes along with that. What if you met somebody that wasn't with God at the moment you met? How do you navigate? Like, you're going on, you're moving on, right? You're dating, and you meet somebody,
Mhm.
but he's probably not in church regular. He's probably been to church, but just not in church regular. How do you, and so to talk to him about his spirituality at that moment, like, how much of a factor is that for you?
Mhm.
How
That's
does that play
me,
out?
that's a big factor because, like I said, I know what I want. I know that I want a man of God.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm
can
not
someone be
around
brought
to waste my
along?
time. I'm not around
Yeah.
to waste my time. There's an expiration date for it.
Right, but
Or
I mean, you might get along in any other way, though.
we
You know,
might
but he's
get
just not in
along,
the
but
church.
those are the things
Then.
that are important to me. Those are the things that are important to me. I don't
So-
have, I'm 61 years old. I really don't have a lot of time to
So
wait.
you basing your relationship on evaluating
value
where this
my
person is. So
relationship
does
with
it matter
God.
the person or or how they are? Does it matter the person or how they are?
You need to
understand what I'm saying?
clarify that for me. I'm not.
Well, you might like a specific person. You can like a specific person, right?
Mhm.
Regardless of whether they're Christian or not, right? If you
Yeah.
like them.
Yeah.
Now, do you enter into relationship with them,
And I'm
whether
saying
they're
for
Christian or
me,
not?
it's
Yeah.
not really what I'm interested in. I want a man of God. So for me, I would say I turn away from that because for
Okay.
me, my relationship with God and is more important.
We'll see.
That's
Well,
where
let
I'm
me.
going. But I feel
Okay.
like if I were to
No,
get
no,
into
good
involved
answer.
with someone who isn't in a relationship with God, that may slow me down. It may hinder. Like I'm going. Like
So-
I've got my
Right.
task. What God wants me to do. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to, and I'd have to pray about it too. It's like it's not. There's no, I guess, black and white. It's not black and white, but for me, on the surface,
Right.
I would say that no, I'm going to God.
But what if God hasn't called him yet? Yet is the key
Hasn't
word.
called who? Yeah.
Him.
Well, maybe if God calls him
And
and
how
then
would
he
you
catches
know?
up with me, if
Yeah.
God calls him and he catches up with me, then great.
Oh, so he
I
got to
don't know.
catch
That's
up
the
to you.
way I look at it. I don't know. Maybe
Well, I'm
everybody
just
else.
saying. So do you forego seeing with somebody that might be right for you on every other level, except that is the caveat. He doesn't have that with him yet.
I guess what I'm saying is that
would you
I don't.
trust
I
yourself
wouldn't
to bring him
see-
along?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that I don't see him as right for me. If that's my key thing. That is my first thing, is that he has to be a man of God, and then everything else gets added to it. And if he ain't hitting that, then I guess I'm just moving on, and he'll have to catch up.
Okay,
I don't know.
I want to
Everybody
hear
else-
from everybody else. I want to hear from
Yeah,
everybody
yeah,
else.
yeah.
Yes, please.
But for
Um,
me, he has to believe in God, because I mean, that's just a non-negotiable. You know, I wouldn't see myself entertaining going out with somebody who is an atheist. But a belief in God is important. Do they need to be where I am spiritually, and not to say that I have arrived, because I have not. As someone said to me today, they had a sermon called "I'm still on the bus, but I haven't arrived yet," and I thought that was just so cute. But that foundationally, that would have to be there, because I don't know what God has planned. God might be using our dating relationship as part of the drawing. That could be my assignment. I don't know, but at least in terms of foundation,
My point exactly.
he has to believe in God and that he is. And I would want that person, knowing who I am in God and what my role is at Wellspring, to want to go to church with me on Sundays, because the absence of that, then there really is nothing. Now, if they're at another church and they invite me to come to their church, okay, then you know what? Let me talk to my pastor. Maybe I can come on the second Sunday. But
Yep.
Not second, not third, not fifth, not Bible study. What? That ain't
Well,
Gwen.
Well, if your service
just
starts
figuring.
at 11:30, then I can join you. But
Yeah,
if it
yeah,
starts
yeah,
at 11:30,
Well, I'm
exactly.
yeah, I'm
just trying.
sorry. Now I gotta
I'm
be
just trying to
well.
get to the point. Do we throw the baby out with the bathwater? I mean, if a gentleman caller finds you attractive, but he's not in your church, he's not in any church, but he still has a spiritual, or maybe he's open to it. How would you affect that if you're so finite in what you want and what you feel you need in your life, and you won't deal with anything but? I think there's a certain flexibility you got to have, because look at me, myself, for instance. Before God called me, I still knew the pastor before then. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think that for me, let me just say for me, still, he has to believe in God, seriously, because to me, everything starts there. Now, maybe he doesn't go to church every single Sunday. Okay, but still he's out there doing God's work, whatever that might be. You see, so it's not like a cut and dry, oh, you got to go to church with me every Sunday, Bible study, because I myself have a busy life. Okay. So I myself can't go to church every Sunday, you know, but I still am out here making sure I am doing what I think, and as results, what I see is that I'm still doing God's work. That's what I expect of my man. He doesn't have to go to church with me every single Sunday, but he does have to go sometime with me. But definitely, you know, he has to know exactly where I stand, and we have to grow in that together. And no, we're not going to be at the same pace and all that, but that has to be the foundation.
And let's be clear, I'm not saying that whoever I date has to be at the same level, but there has to be a foundation there. That has to have a relationship, an active relationship. I'm sorry, I just cannot see myself. If the person says, oh yeah, I'm spiritual. I mean, people could be spiritual and be into what they think, like Buddhism. There could be other things. I'm not into that, right? It's got to be a lover of Christ, a lover of God. We have to be clear on what they're spiritual about. And I'm not just accepting anything. God doesn't want that for me anyway. He wants me to prosper and prosper well, you know? So, and you have to make decisions. That's where the discerning part comes in. As you get older, you get wiser about those things. And you know what? If I have to be alone, you know what? Then so be it. I'm happy where I am now in Christ, in my relationship with God. I have a very fulfilling life. It would be nice to have a partner, get married. I'm not married. I'm dating someone. I'm not married. It would be nice. I would like that.
I have right here in my
it's going to
notes.
be a lot of hard work. I'm going to have to do some changing about how, because I've been single, all my life, really. I have kids, was supposed to get married, didn't, but I know that there's things that I've got to work on and adjust to just even being in a marriage. I've never been married, but I know, I understand wife has a role and the husband has a role. The wife is a helpmeet, the husband has a role. I understand that from what I've learned in the Bible, but it is it is a lot of work, and I'm sure Shelley and Fred could and all of you guys that have been married before can teach me some things about that.
Well,
I just want to add to that.
So I want to hear from them.
Us?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to add to that when I met Fred, I didn't know if he was religious, if he went to church, or I did not know that. My eyes were affixed on him. I have to say that. One thing I didn't like, and I always said that I would never even look at anybody that wore a do-rag in the gym. He wore a do-rag in the gym, and I was my eyebrows were really raised. I was like, oh. And but he had such a kind spirit, and everybody that meets Fred, before they even know all about him, I know that they can see the kindness on him, sincerity. He's humble. So I have to say that no, that was not the first thing that I, looked at. So he asked me if I wanted to go out on a date. If I did, leave my number at the front desk. We were at the gym. I did leave my number, and we did go on a date, and the rest was history. And soon after that, because I was raised in the church, I always talk about God and stuff like that anyways. So, and do you want to say whether you were,
At the time, I wasn't, in a church, and honestly, I haven't gone to a church in quite some years, and even at that time when we met, I was always thinking to myself, well, how come this relationship is not really going that smooth? There was a lot of bumps in the roads, and I kept saying, like, okay, one day we'll be, everything will be good, and next minute it will just come crashing down. I thought I can figure it out on my own. I really believed that for a long time, that I can figure it out on my own. And honestly, the missing piece was God.
yeah,
That was the missing piece. And it took me a while, it took me a long time to understand that. And once I learned that, then I noticed things start to change. Like our relationship got stronger. We start to understand each other more. Everything just started to click. And
yeah. And definitely when we came to Wellspring,
yes,
that Fred was all in. I couldn't hold him back after that. So once we joined the church, that's everything that we say now when we're talking to people or, conversations amongst ourselves, basically, God first. It's always God first
yes,
and how he would want us to be. But I would never erase the fact that before Fred, I still felt like I was a virtuous woman of God. I did. Because of the things that I do, I'm always doing for others, always, and I still am. And my love, my place, I think, in this world is helping others with their health, helping them be fit.
Noble.
And the biggest community that I work with right now is seniors. So
Nice.
yeah, and I've just always been a giver, a person that cares for others. And most of you all know that I am caring for my ex-husband. He's completely unable to take care of himself. And so I'm giving back,
God.
I'm ministering, I'm
Yes.
serving, I'm,
Yes.
so
Look at
yeah.
God. Yes.
Yeah.
Look at God.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
God.
I know he appreciates it, and I'll be with him until
God
whatever.
gives you the strength to do things like that. That's why you can have
Absolutely.
it. That can only happen with God. You know what I mean? Have the
Absolutely. And
strength.
he's amazing.
Friend. Yes.
That's gonna say that
Now
too.
my current husband's amazing by being there,
Yes. God.
just
God.
supporting me,
That is God.
supporting me through it. So
And I wanna
everybody
say-
asks, well,
Thank God.
does he say anything about you being over there all the time? No, he doesn't. He comes over too.
So
Well, I
Whenever I
want to
can-
say, and Minister Fred knows I feel this way, that I so applaud that speaks to, both emotional and spiritual maturity. It takes both of those things for you to be able to show up that way for her, right? For him as well, right?
Amen.
Both emotionally and spiritually mature, that you're able to do that. But it also says so much about how secure you are within yourself, right? You know who she is to you, right? And who you are to each other, and that too makes that very easy to do. As someone who, like many of you, has been married before, I can tell you that I have often been called upon to be in emotional spaces with exes of other people in my world. And that's not hard for me to do at all because I'm confident in who I am. I know who I am. To stand in that space for somebody else is easy for me. And so when I see you do it, I, in many respects, see myself. I can applaud it because I know I can do it and have had to do it. Right. We only have a few minutes left for this recording. I don't know where the time went. We only have literally about 2 or 3 minutes left before we have to say goodbye. So I want to say, first of all, thank you all so much for what you have shared thus far and tell you how incredibly excited I am to go on to do part 2 of this so that we can continue to unpack these 2 pages of notes that I have sitting in front of me. I also want to say that, one of the most common questions I get asked as a pastor, and mostly by women, a few men have asked, but mostly by women, is that people want me to pray that they find someone who is in the church. It happens all the time. I get direct messages all the time. Pray for me, I want to find someone who's in the church. Pray for me, I need a man in the church. Pray for me, I need a wife in the church. And I say this to everyone. You don't need someone who is in the church. You need someone who the church is in them. Because we are the church, right? We are the church. You are the church.
Yes.
Yes.
You don't need them to be in the church. You need the church to be in them, because if they are in the church, generally,
Amen.
that's all you get,
Amen.
right?
Yes. Amen.
And when they come out of the
Amen.
church, so does their heart.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
You want the church to be in them so that no matter where they show up in the world, if you could never get to a church again as a believer, your relationship with God would not be altered. as you
Amen.
are,
Right.
right? And that's what you want in a partner. But you also want, and we'll talk more about this as we unpack all of this, the person whose heart God has fixed concerning you. Because that part right there is the part that allows us to show up when life is difficult. To show up as Minister Fred is doing right now, right? When life is difficult and things are happening, because life will happen. Everything's tested. And we'll talk more about this when we come back together again, about the challenges of relationships. There are difficult times and there are difficult seasons. God doesn't care what we go through, he cares how we go through them, right? So we'll talk more about that. We'll unpack more of that when we come back together. Just want to say thank you all so much. Each of you knows how much I love you and how grateful I am that you're a part of this conversation with me. I cannot wait to come back together and do the next part of it. Again, we'll be a slightly larger group the next time, but we will continue to unpack all of this together. Thank you to our listening audience. Thank you for listening and for tuning in and for liking and sharing. And thank you to Boston Praise Radio for allowing us this platform. We are so incredibly grateful for the opportunity to do it. So until next Sunday.
Until next time.
Again, God bless you. Thank you for joining.
God bless.
Keep living well. Keep living well.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Right. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You are tuned in to Boston Praise Radio. I'm your host for this hour. I am Pastor Traci Jackson, Senior Pastor of Living Well with Wellspring Global Fellowship. We come to you 2 Sundays a month, third Sunday and fourth Sunday, third Sundays from 4 to 5 and fourth Sundays from 5 to 6, bringing you all things that talk about living well. In the studio with me today, I have a vast audience and I can't wait to introduce them. But first, let me introduce my co-host, none other than Deacon Jerome. He is here with me on today. Deacon, say hello to everybody.
Welcome and Grand Rising to everyone. I'm glad to have you guys on the show this evening, and we have a great show today. Pastors lined up a great subject matter, and we'll get to it just in a moment after we introduce our panel.
Yeah, so on my top right, not sure that you'll see them in the order that I do, but on my top right, I have Minister Colette Jackson. Minister Colette, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Minister Colette Jackson. In addition to being a minister, I am the Senior Human Resources Business Partner and HR Director for the Executive Offices of Health and Human Services here in Boston. Thank you.
In my upper left-hand corner, I have 2 of my favorite people in the world. I have Minister in Training Fred Johnson and his beautiful wife, Shelley White. Would you please introduce yourselves?
Okay, yes. I'm Shelley White Johnson. I am a personal trainer and I am the owner of Shell's Total Fitness.
My name is Fred Johnson. and I currently work at Blue Cross Blue Shield. Been there for 24 years. Supervisor there, working in member services.
Yay, thank
Thank
you.
you, Fred.
In my
Welcome.
lower left corner, there is another favorite person of mine. She is none other than Jackie Cairo Williams. Jackie, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Deborah Jacquinetta Cairo Williams,
Yes.
but I make it short to D. Jackie Cairo Williams. Currently, I am the Vice President of the Urban League Guild. I am a member of Seniors on the Move. I'm a hostess for BNN. I am also on the Mass AIP Executive Council, and I work part-time for a program called Black Women Lead. And there's 2 miles right now of Black women who were the first to accomplish whatever it was in their field here in Boston. It's on Blue Hill Ave, and it's the largest art project in Boston. We're doing a book on it, and there's a display right now in Northeastern University in the Roxbury campus.
Excellent.
Very nice.
Nice.
Great.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank
Amazing.
you. Thank you. And then I
And
have
last,
yet another favorite person, and you can tell I have a lot of those. She's an amazing woman, and she's an amazing woman of God, but she's also a recording artist. And so she is Annette Hall. Would you please introduce yourself?
the Reverend.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Yeah.
My name's Annette Hall, member of Wellspring Global Fellowship, serving on the praise team. And my job or what I do every day is I am head of the project management office within cybersecurity at Biogen. And I've been there for 1.5 years, and I'm just glad to be here.
Amen.
We are
Welcome you all.
We're so glad to have you. So welcome everyone. Today we are talking about dating over 50. We're talking about dating over 50. It's a conversation that comes up a lot for people who are over 50. It's a conversation that comes up a lot for people who are divorced and some people who've never been married, but it also is a conversation that comes up a lot in the church world. And I think that there are a lot of reasons in the church world that we don't talk about a lot of things. And I think that's another show in its entirety, and one I fully intend to host. But we don't talk a lot about dating. It's not a conversation that we have a lot. And so I wanted to be the one to have that conversation and to have it this way. So we're going to do this conversation, we hope, at least in 2 parts. It may end up being more than that, depending on how far we get with it. But the first part is today. Next week, we're going to come together with a slightly larger group and continue the conversation. But today we're starting with this group of people talking about dating over 50 years old. And so I just want to open the floor to anyone to say, when you think of dating over 50, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, firstly, I would say as a Christian dating, what does that look like? Because if I were to go back on rely on the Bible, which I do now, I would say that you have to find someone that, as the Bible says, it says, do not believe every spirit, but test every spirit. So you got to test the spirit, and you might not believe it, but you got to test the spirit of your significant other if you're dating, because as a Christian, you want to know that they're in the spirit, or or you can lead them to it. They're able to be led to the spirit before you even stop the date. I think that would be a challenge. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I would think, as a Christian, if you're out dating, that would be a concern.
Absolutely. But for me, the first thing that came to mind is dating over 50 for me has been exhausting. I'll tell you why.
Okay. All right. Do tell.
It's because I was out of the dating game for a while, and dating has changed. It looks different from when I was back in my 20s and 30s. And so it's been a challenge for me, because not being in the dating game for a while and being single and then now going to that, you're used to being by yourself, you're used to sort of like doing things on your own, and now you're adding this other person.
You gotta make space for someone else.
Yeah, you have to pay attention to that person's feelings. You have to be emotionally intelligent about your partner, and it's just been a challenge for me because I'm just so used to just like, I'm gonna go here. I don't have to, tell somebody where I'm going, or I don't have to be, back at a certain time. I can do what I want. And now it's like a little bit, it's a lot different. So
consideration.
Yeah, it's been a challenge for me.
Okay, so we have considerations you have to make.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I think, oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Okay. I think for me, dating in my 50s was amazing. And I have to say that because because I was dating Fred, my husband. But when I first started dating him, I was in my 40s, mid 40s. So that gave us quite some time to get to know each other. So that's why, but we were still dating. So in my 50s, it was fabulous because we've already worked out most of our kinks, most of our, getting to know each other. And we got married when I was still in my 50s, like 57, right?
Yeah. 57.
And now I'm 60, so I'm not in my 50s anymore. But I just lost my train of thought. But I think that dating in my 50s, I feel much more secure, more grown up, more focused. I know exactly what I want, where I want to go, and what I want to do. So for me, it's like I'm settling into it, like I'm nestling into it. So starting this journey in my 60s, and Fred's just 50, I think it's going to be smooth sailing. I mean, we have our, we just had a fight this weekend, but we weren't really talking, but I think it's been really nice for me, refreshing.
Yeah. And as a man's point of view, just being newly 50, it just seems that, when you're 30s and your 40s,